And Emma, I will continue to let people in through the waiting room, but we have a nice crowd right now, so you're welcome to begin.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you everybody online for joining us today on this Sunday. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be here welcoming you today to this information session from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen Nation, known today as the Songhees and Esquimalt Nations. And I'd like to extend my very much my gratitude for the opportunity to live and also work and learn and play on this territory. And I know there's people from all over the province potentially dialing in today. So if you'd like to add a territorial acknowledgement for where you're joining us from, that's very welcome. Please enter something in the chat. This session today, we have very much been developing it very closely with our friends group, the Friends of the British Columbia Archives. So I just also want to say thank you very much to all of the friends who've been working with us towards getting us to this session today. And just extend, we have Laura Wilson, who's the president of the Friends online today. So just introduce her to you there. Laura, did you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Emma. And I just also like to say I'm joining from Lekwungen territory, very close to Mikan, also known as Beacon Hill Park. I just want to express my thanks on behalf of the FBCA board and membership to the BC Archives and RBCM for developing these dialogue and info sessions. A special note also of thanks to Angie Bain, Wendy Wickwire, and Laura Miller on our board for their efforts with our working group to provide feedback to BC Archives about the development of these sessions. I'd also, again, another thanks, a sincere thanks to FBCA members and past and present board members for their continuing to express their concerns and ideas about the future of BC Archives. It's a very important part of the work we do that we can gather feedback from our stakeholders and share that with RBCM and BC Archives. Yeah, we're looking forward to this information session and the dialogue sessions to come. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So hopefully, please let me know. You should be able to see on your screen now just an overview of what we're covering in this information session. First of all, Chris is going to just talk about the Royal BC Museum engagement that is currently happening. It's been happening for a while now. We're into phase 2, which is where he and his team are having some real dialogues about what the future of the museum looks like, including the archives. Then I'll be leading us through some kind of the current status of where we're at with the collections and research building project, and what the impact on the archives is going to be. And then finally, we're going to finish up, as Laura says, this will be the first of a number of sessions. This is a bit more of an information session where we can provide you with information about what's going on with the archives and what we're going to potentially be talking about at those future sessions. So I'll talk a bit more about that at the end, and hopefully we'll have some time for questions and discussion. So maybe let's just then, Chris, would you like to kick us off with talking a bit about your engagement?
Sure. Thank you so much, Emma. And thanks everyone for joining today. My name is Chris O'Connor, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement here at the Royal BC Museum. And I wanted to just give a very brief overview of this larger project, and then the specific work around engagement with the BC Archives and the Collections and Research Building comes within that. So I just wanted to give a sort of broad scope look at our general community engagement work, that kind of umbrella work. So Emma, if you go to the next slide. This team, the community engagement team, started at the beginning of 2023. And it came out of a real recognition of the importance of working with and alongside community in the work of reimagining the museum and the archives in this downtown site, and then how to be more responsive and reflective of the needs across the province as well as the provincial museum and as the provincial archives. The first phase of our work was January 1st to May 31st. And we had sessions both here in Victoria and across the province. In addition, we have staff that are embedded in the communities around the province as well. So they actually live in the communities that they're also working in. Those are the regional partnership managers for this work. And they had 32 sessions, and in general, we had 31 sessions. So we have lots of opportunities, both locally here in Victoria and around the province, to begin this work together. Phase 2, with the next slide, it started in September and it's ongoing. And there's lots of different ways of getting involved. You can attend a community conversation, sign up for an information session, fill out a comment card, email us at feedback@royalbcmuseum.bc.ca. And then also complete a survey. We have an online survey that we're doing about the overall work. I'll share a link to that in the comments, so the chats after I do this section. So the next slide, you'll see we're really guided in this process by 4 guiding thematic questions. The first question is format and location of museum experiences. So what's going to happen with this downtown site? So we have 6 options for how to reimagine this downtown site. And we're wanting to work with the public to see what is the appetite for those different options. You'll see in the survey those 6 options, and then we will also at each of our community conversations dig in deeper into those options too. We're also looking at Indigenous reconciliation and UNDRIP implementation, how to better embed that into the work that we do as an organization, diversity and representation, and accessibility and inclusion. And these next 4 slides, you can just go through fairly quickly. Emma just gives a general sense of those 4 themes. If you come to a community conversation, or if you take the survey, you'll see that this is the heart of our work going forward. And one of the things about the diversity and representation and inclusion and accessibility is that it's relevant for us as a museum and archives here in Victoria, but then also with our partners around the province. So we're having some really great co-created sessions with partners that are also thinking about how best to bring this practice into their own organizations. So if you go to the next slide. So upcoming sessions that we have in Victoria, February 4th, 6th, March 11th, and 27th. We also have some virtual conversations. I'll send a link also to our engagement page with all the dates that we have. But this is just to give you a little sense of that. And then the next slide gives you a sense of the provincial sessions that we're doing. And someone had mentioned Maple Ridge, and tomorrow we're doing a session at the Maple Ridge Library. And then you'll see several more sessions around the province as well. After April, we'll be doing more, especially up north. So, and more in the Kootenays after April. All right, and I think that was the last slide, Emma. All right, so I know that this is primarily about the BC Archives, but I just wanted to give that overview. If anyone has any questions, I'll be here. You're welcome to put them in the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. But thanks, Emma, for giving a little space for that. And now back over to you.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so Before we get going with talking about our future, just thought we'd talk a bit about our history. So, as some of you may or may not know, the Royal BC Museum was founded in 1886, and the provincial government has collected archival records since 1894. In 1908, the Provincial Archives was established, and it was mandated to collect material of provincial significance. You'll see there, I think like this, we have the larger image there actually up in the lunchroom in the archives building at the moment. And we also have the backstory on the archivist or librarian that you can see pictured there. So, you know, if you're ever interested, please follow up with us after this session and we can tell you a lot more. But that is the Archives Department exhibit room in February 1949. And on the right there, you can see our current building, which it was the museum building opened in 1969, and our archives building that we're in right now, and is pictured there, opened in 1970. If you're interested, oh, did my slides just move? That seemed to do it on its own. If you're interested, then we actually have a Webster interview that was from 1979, where he's talking about a visit to the Provincial Archives. And I know that we can send you the link. We'll try and pop it in the chat now if you're interested. And we also have a history of the Provincial Archives on the website. So we can also pop that link in the chat too. So the Provincial Archives at the moment, we steward about, it's approximately, say, 8.5 million records, which includes 31 linear kilometers of textual records, 181,000 maps and architectural records, and 5.5 million photographs. Our mandate as the Provincial Repository for Government and Private Records of Significance to British Columbia is established in the Museum Act and also in the Information Management Act. We welcome approximately 3,000 visitors on site every year and 86,000 visitors online at last count. That's visitors to our web pages and also our online collections databases. Staff here retrieve approximately 5,000 containers of records for researchers every year and respond to approximately 5,000 inquiries. And they, at the moment, on latest stats, they copy in excess of 13,000 pages of records for clients. And let's see, where was I? The archives building in the Fannin Tower. So the building behind the archives building is called the Fannin Tower, and it houses all of our collections, the museum collections. They have multiple challenges with aging infrastructure. And which puts our collections at risk. So for example, in the archives building, the archives library is mostly housed on the lower floors of the building and is very much at risk in case if there was an earthquake or any kind of seismic activity. The building has also in its past contained asbestos. There's seismic structure concerns, limitations on space, areas where the building sits below sea level. For those of you that visit us, you'll know that there are parking concerns as well as accessibility challenges. Basically, the current facility, the building that we're in, while it's very much loved, sorry, the slides keep advancing on their own. Well, it's very much loved. It was not designed to meet increasing public needs for digitization or internet connectivity. So that is why the Royal BC Museum will be moving its BC Archives to the new Archives Collections and Research Building, which is currently being built in Colwood. So I'm going to be talking a bit about what that looks like. We'll be moving to Colwood and scheduled to open in 2026. And the building is being built on Lekwungen territory in an area that is known today as Colwood, BC. And we are very grateful for our partnership with Songhees Nation and Esquimalt Nation as they walk together on this important journey. You'll see there I've added in a basic map to the site. So the location, it's an acre site is in the Royal Bay development, where Ryder Heshtall Way meets Machosen Road. And currently the new building is 15,200 square meters, or that's 163,611 square foot for those of you working in feet. And it will be a state-of-the-art facility using mass timber construction. It will meet Clean BC energy efficient standards and will be LEED Gold certified. The construction started in summer 2023 and is anticipated to complete in late 2025 with a public opening in 2026. A $204.8 million contract has been awarded to Maple Reinders Constructions Limited for the design and construction of the Archives, Collections and Research Building, following a competitive design process. The total capital project costs for the building are valued at more than $270 million. Just for everyone's awareness, the Collections and Research Building, the CRB, is a temporary name for the project, and a permanent name will be assigned to the facility prior to completion. So, as mentioned, the Archives, Research and Collections Building that you can see there, and this is a rendering that came from the design builders. This is the view from the north, looking at the building, and that road that you can see running in front would be where you drive in to get in towards the parking, which is over here on this side. I don't know if you can see my pointer there. So the building is being designed to achieve gold level Rick Hansen Foundation accessibility, and is planned to meet rigorous sustainability standards, including the LEED Gold certification. The building offers plenty of on-site accessible parking and bike lockups. The site is being designed to crime prevention through environmental design standards and will be appropriately lit at night with camera surveillance, both interior and exterior to the building. There will also be 24-hour security guards on site. I know there's been a lot of questions about transportation. What we know is that the City of Colwood are working on a transit plan for the area, and that's kind of all we know at this point. But we've got 2 more years before this opens, so I'm sure there'll be more information to come about getting to the building, as it's most certainly something that concerns our staff as well as all of our users. So we're working together with Colwood on that. So there is a number of outdoor spaces that have been designed around the exterior of the building, and one of these you can see here. There will be a Garry Oak gathering circle with a fire pit just in front of the building here. This is the main lobby entranceway here. But there's also a number of others too. There'll be a seasonal wetland with an observation deck. There's going to be spaces, there are a number of spaces for public art around the building as well, and an open play meadow located near the exterior of the building where we have a learning lab. So we'll be able to use that for educational and group visits, those kinds of things. This is a rendering of a kind of a placeholder for where some of that public art will go. So there's this area here that you can see sort of lit up at night. That will be a design that's yet to come. So there's currently, I think there's an RFQ out at the moment, but there'll be an RFP for public art later in 2024. So that's all in process. This is the entrance, the main public entrance to the Archives, Collections and Research Building. We don't know yet if or how the BC Archives opening hours or services may be impacted at the new location, because opening hours for the building are still to be determined. But again, that's something that I anticipate was partly a reason why we're running these sessions. It's a way that we can hear from you about what you'd like at the new site. And then we can work towards that over the next couple of years. So this is going in through that entranceway. When you first come into the building, you'll be coming into the main lobby area, which has been designed as a flex space. So right here is a sort of anticipated from the designer layout of some comfortable seating and a place for people to relax and have a conversation. The main entranceway you'll come in, you can't see it in this rendering, but to the right-hand side here, there's a reception desk. So there will be a reception area, and then behind this wall here, so the reception is to the right, and then behind this wall here, there will be a coat room and, you know, washrooms, those kinds of things. But the BC Archives visitors, the BC Archives will be down this corridor here. It's the first kind of space that you get to once you walk down this corridor. So all of these facilities essentially are in the entranceway to where the archives will be. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to the previous slide. There will be also, I know we've also had a lot of questions about, will there be somewhere to eat on site? There will be no cafeteria or coffee shop on site, but there are multiple places to eat and amenities close by. And some of those we already know because that area is being built out right now. And if people are interested, we can certainly share more of what we know is being confirmed. And I think we have already done some of that with the Friends too, but we can definitely provide more information there for those of you who are interested. There will also be a bookable multi-purpose room for groups. And this main lobby area is a flex space. So one of the benefits to this area is this end here at the end of the hall can also turn into a stage for presentations, so that if you were having an event at nighttime or after hours, you'd be able to use that for presentations and events. So that's what we're working towards. That those kinds of things will be happening. So this is a rendering of the main visitor pathway that visitors to the building will be walking around to observe all of the different collections areas, including the archives. So visitors travel around the building by the central visitor pathway, and along this pathways there are areas for interpretive displays related to the Royal BC Museum's collections, including the BC Archives. There will be information about the BC Archives on the pathway wall outside the reading room, as well as there's going to be some vitrines for display of archival materials, which we'll be developing, you know, based on community input. So yeah, imagine some interesting displays on, I think those are meant to be the vitrines down the corridor there. Now this is the part you've all been waiting for. This is a rendering of the BC Archives reading room. So the building includes a new BC Archives reading room, and what you can't see in this rendering is this is the main like reception, retrievals and reference desk for the archives for our staff, and then behind are the tables for researchers. What's behind the reference desk are actually, there's an additional 2 private reading rooms that will be bookable spaces that can accommodate, you can either have them as 2 private rooms that accommodate, I think it's up to 5 people in each smaller space, and then they can also be joined together into a larger private room that will accommodate up to 10 people. So that's something we don't have right now. That we're really looking forward to, because it means that we can actually offer more private spaces for either people looking at restricted records, or certainly there's a lot of times when we maybe have visiting groups where they're encountering some potentially triggering materials that they would prefer to review in a private space. It also does offer us support too for when we have, there'll be monitors within those private spaces too. So if you wanted to have a group look at audiovisual archival records, we'll be able to offer that in those spaces. To the left here, again, off the rendering, will be all the microfilm and microfiche cabinets. Those will be on actually compact shelving, rolling racking. And then our existing banks of microfiche film audio video access kiosks are also off to the side here that you can't see in the rendering. The main reading room, the number of researchers, sorry, it just keeps advancing. The number of reading room tables that we have there accommodates 14 seated researchers at a time, which is exactly the same capacity as we have right now in the current building. But as I mentioned, because we have those additional private spaces, we've actually increased the number of researchers we could have in the archives at the time. Let's see what else. As regards to the microfilm and microfiche and all of those scanners and readers, some of our existing equipment that we have now in the BC Archives will be moving with us to the new building. And we're also going to be, basically we're reviewing our technology and we'll be upgrading and buying some new as well. The reading room itself, as you can see, will have new furniture. It will also have much better technology. So we'll have high-speed Wi-Fi connectivity and some existing map. And I think this is where the map cabinets that are existing in the BC Archives reading room will be going, as well as some of the card catalogues down that side wall. One of the other big new things for us is that, again, off the reading room to the left here that you can't see in the rendering, will be a new community digitization space, or what we're calling a DigiLab. And it will have 5 scanning stations available for digitization projects. The application process to use that service, we're still developing it. It's very much, the idea behind it is being modeled on something that Library and Archives Canada offer currently to their users. But basically, we'll be developing that over the next couple of years, and we'll be sharing more information with you about what that process looks like to use that space in advance of and when we open at the new location in 2026. Sorry, my slides just keep doing this by themselves and I haven't figured out how to turn it off. For comparison, in terms of size, and I know this is something that's come up, the archives reading room spaces, the number of square footage, it will be about 1/3 smaller than our current space in the BC Archives building. But as mentioned, we've just managed to use that space more efficiently because we're actually fitting in potentially more space for people to research. But I do want to share that if you're sort of thinking in terms of what does that look like in comparison to the current space. We're also using the space more efficiently because we're actually moving, right now we have a lot of square footage dedicated to the microfilm and fiche cabinets. Because we're moving them onto rolling racking, that means we're using the space more efficiently. And we're also, a lot of those film and fiche, they aren't accessed so much anymore because they're for newspapers that have now been digitized and made available online. So some of the film and fiche we might move into our collection storage area, so it will still be accessible, but you just might have to ask the retrievals desk to have it, to see it. Seeing as my slides seem so keen on moving on, I will move on to, oh no, sorry, there was one last thing I wanted to mention. On to the side here, there will also be, in case you were wondering, we're still going to have space for lockers for partial service for after hours materials to be accessed. So those will be within the reading room again, kind of as current, but they're kind of next to the film and fiche cabinets to the side there. All right, I'm guessing there's probably going to be questions about this, but I'll maybe we'll save questions to the end unless anyone has something burning. Okay. So as you kept seeing there, this was an interior rendering of one of the learning labs. So there are a number of learning labs within the building that have been designed for visiting groups, for our educators, for programming and events. There is going to be a history and archives learning lab located right next to the BC Archives reading room. So this is, again, something new that we've never had we don't have in our current building. If we have groups and we want to do workshops, right now, we quite often have to schedule them after hours, on days when the archives is shut or times when the archives is shut. But now we'll have a space, in addition to those private rooms I mentioned, there'll also be a space directly next to the BC Archives that we'll be able to use for programming, for education, events, anything that we want to do. That's a whole new opportunity, I think, in the new space. And this slide here, this is giving you an idea. This is a typical collection storage, so don't take this as 100% accurate rendering, but it was more like an indication of what any of the collection storage areas can look like. So the collection storage at the new building, it replicates the current BC Archives building. So approximately 20% of our collection in the current building right now will be on site, and that's the same as in the new Archives, Collections and Research building in Colwood. And the remaining 80%, that will remain in off-site commercial record storage facilities. So at the moment, when you make a request for materials here, we do say that it may take between 2 to 5 days to retrieve, which is why we quite often ask people to make retrieval requests in advance of visiting. So that will remain the same in the new space. The big difference in terms of collection storage, is that one of the things we are bringing on site is that we'll have 2 new vaults, a cold and a cool storage vault. So we'll be moving all of our audiovisual records that are currently housed in commercial off-site cold and cool storage into that new building. So retrievals, as for sort of those audiovisual materials, that will be a lot quicker and easier to manage because we'll have that all on site.
Emma, can I just jump in for a second? There's a couple of pointed questions. I just thought I would share them with you. Bonnie asks, will there be digitizing of audio video on site, or will it be outsourced? Is one question.
It will be on site. I think I have that later. Actually, it's going to be on this slide or the next one, but I was going to talk about here. Etc. So there are a number of labs in the Collections and Research building, and this one is sort of set up to be like a typical lab for, say, our biology collections. But one of the new big things for us moving to this space is that there's going to be 3 additional collections digitization labs. So this will allow the Royal BC Museum to expand its 2D and 3D digitization of collections and archives, as well as corporate photography. So as it comes to audiovisual materials, yes, now we'll have those audiovisual materials that were currently in offsite storage, which in itself takes some time to retrieve. And then we'll have the labs available in the building to digitize that material. So there's that most certainly should be a much quicker process than it is currently.
And then another question is from Lisa. Is there any capacity to bringing everything on site for storage?
No, the building wasn't designed to accommodate all of the archives collections, because if you consider that, if we're saying 20% of the archives collection is going to be on site, if you consider then you would have to times it by 4 or whatever to get the full the size, the volume of the archives collection. They'd really have needed it to sort of almost double the footprint of the building to accommodate the archives, or built up. So when it was being negotiated with government, I think that fairly early on in the process, there was a decision made that they weren't going to be able to accommodate all of the archives, that we would just build the new building to accommodate what we have right now. So it's something to look at in the future, I think, potentially. But yes, it's going to be the same as we have currently.
And then Lisa has a follow-up question to that. Was there a cost benefits analysis of on-site versus long-term storage?
I personally was not working here and involved, so I can't answer you accurately on that question. I can't believe they didn't look at that. The only thing I would say is that commercial offsite record storage is quite cheap. So it may have been they looked at it and decided that they just keep things as is. But I can't give you an accurate answer, yes or no, on that. But I can't believe they wouldn't have looked at it at the time. That would have been a decision and discussion by the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport. Any more?
No, not right now. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So the next slide I have here is, this is actually a shot of our existing paper conservation lab with 2 of our staff there working away. When we move the archives reading room and its collection, we're anticipating that we're going to begin the move in late 2025 and it will conclude in early 2026. So the way that we're planning it at the moment, and obviously this is very much still evolving, the move is going to be staged. So there'll be different aspects of the collection moving to the new location over time. Presently, the Royal BC Museum is planning to limit full closure of the BC Archives to approximately 4 to 5 weeks maximum. And again, this may change. It's anticipated that we move the reading room services first and reopen the new site with partial service, and then we'll gradually increase access over the following months. As you know, as more of the collection arrives and is in its new spot, we'll be able to expand access. But because, as I mentioned, 80% of our records are in offsite commercial storage, once we get the reference room set up, it means that a lot of those records that are in offsite are government records. It means that we should be able to still be able to recall records in from offsite, no problem. It's that the impact to access will mostly be those records that are currently stored in the building here that are moving to Colwood. So we're going to be working more on a communication plan, the plans for closure and reopening over the coming years. And so we'll be able to communicate more with our public and our visitors and partners in 2025 of what that looks like more firmly. We will also develop a critical access request process. And so we'll communicate that in advance of closure for urgent information requests that might occur over the closure period and here, or the move timeline, as it were. And here I'm thinking about things like, I know there say requests for records that are needed in an urgent litigation or something like that. But yes, so more information about how we get from this site right now to the new site will be upcoming, and you'll definitely hear more in 2025. So that leads me through to our community conversations, this dialogue today and the future dialogues that we have planned. Yeah, we very much, we'd really love to hear from everyone, from all of our visitors and users. And what we have been planning on doing is providing a number of ways that you can provide your voice and your thoughts about our future. So we're going to be hosting a number of dialogue sessions. At the moment, I'll lead you through the dates on the next slide. But also we're going to be launching an online survey that will be out soon, so watch for that. And then also, similar to Chris's team, if you just want to email in comments, you can do that by emailing the Engage email address that's on the screen there. We'll also have some comment cards available for our on-site visitors if people want to fill those in. But the next sessions that are upcoming, we're going to be delving into 4, similar to how Chris is doing his engagement. We'll be looking at 4 guiding thematic questions to sort of guide the dialogues, and those are covering these 4 topics here. So access, services, learning and engagement, and we're also going to be talking about Indigenous reconciliation and UNDRIP implementation. So our question around access is looking at, what does archival access mean to you? And is the current building and current website meeting your needs? If not, what barriers to accessing the BC Archives require attention? And this is sort of closely linked to that. It's the question around services. So what BC Archives services do you currently use and how often? And what are the most valuable services that an archive can provide? Because we really want to be moving ourselves, especially given we're opening in the new space. This is a real opportunity to look at how we're operating and what we offer currently, and how we might change and what opportunities are there to better meet your needs as users of the BC Archives. Finally, we're looking at learning and engagement as well. This is especially relevant given we're going to have this new space at the Archives Collection and Research Building to offer more sort of learning opportunities, workshops, tours, etc. So we really want to hear what kind of learning experiences do you wish to have as a BC Archives visitor, either online, on-site in Victoria, or in the community. So not just limited to the physical space, although, as I said, that is interesting and important. But what else could we be doing better, either virtually or out in BC in the province? And then we'll also be looking at reconciliation and under-implementation. This question is the same question that Chris's team have included in his engagement sessions, because it really, it covers a lot and it's very important for both the archives and the museum. What roles do the Royal BC Museum and Archives in general play in moving reconciliation forward? And yeah, so these are the 4 guiding questions for the future dialogue sessions. And they'll also be how we structure the online survey as well. So the online survey will replicate these questions, but probably I can see us expanding them so that they're designed better for somebody typing things in online. So upcoming conversation sessions where we're going to go through those questions I just ran you through there. We have one in-person session scheduled. It will be happening at the Royal BC Museum in our conference hall. And that's something that we've developed very much speaking with the Friends of the BC Archives. And that is dated February 25th, 2024. And then we have another couple of virtual sessions scheduled for March 10th and March 24th. And these are in addition to the sessions that Chris mentioned earlier on in the presentation. So there's nothing that would preclude you from attending both. If you're interested in providing your voice in a number of different forums, or if you're more interested in making comments as relates to the archives, please do. If you'd like to attend any of our sessions, we'd be very grateful to hear what you have to say. And then, as I said, yeah, there will be other opportunities to provide some feedback to us. We're also working on additional partner engagements. So we're currently in a conversation with the BC Historical Federation as to whether or not they would like to have their own conversation with their members. Similarly, we're engaged with we're working on a joint project at the moment with the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation and the Indian Residential School History and Dialogue Centre at UBC. So we're in discussions with them about co-creating a session for those nations that are engaged in IRS research. In addition, we're speaking with government about making sure that we're capturing the thoughts of researchers from BC government ministries, since BC government ministries themselves are quite a heavy user of the BC Archives. Then in terms of kind of broader reach, our online survey, we're hoping to share out to the academic networks, to the universities, the higher education institutions, also our on-site and in-person and remote visitors. And really, like, it offers us the opportunity to ask these questions for pretty much anyone who wants to lend their voice to our future. And yeah, and that's the plan. I'm sure, yeah, we can probably have plenty of time now for questions. Where are we at? 2:40?
Yeah, so Emma, we have some great questions.
Okay, great.
So we'll cycle through them. If everyone who put questions, will make sure that we get to all of them. But we'll go through one at a time. And so the first one is from Angie. So the showrooms with great lighting. Researchers frequently use cameras to get photos of documents, and even well-lit rooms can have bad shadow issues. Are practical things like photographing documents being considered with lighting design?
That's a good question. I mean, we just did the lighting. I can take that one away and have a look at it. Maybe Angie, you and I can follow up after this session on that. I'm trying to think which design package it was that we looked at the lighting. I think actually, let's go back to, I can find it quickly. It's not going to let me. I believe in the reading room, there's like, there's lighting that runs both horizontally and vertically. I can check in terms of the private spaces what that looks like too. But yeah, maybe Angie, we could talk about that offline after this session, and I can find out more information for you.
And maybe part of that concern also is that there's a lot of big windows, so natural light coming through. So, but I know that all those spaces have good blackout curtain.
They do.
Or
So all of
blinds
the
too.
yeah, all of the windows around the side that you saw there, they were all up in the rendering, but they all have blinds that you can roll down too. And I don't believe the private reading rooms actually, they have a window that leads onto the reference room, but otherwise, other than that, they're enclosed.
Great.
And
So
again, those windows have blinds too. Sorry.
no, that's great. And thanks for being open to reach back out to Angie. Russ asks the question about whether just the general request for a reading room in the legislative precinct where we could request and obtain access to collection materials on that site in Victoria. I wonder if you could speak to that, Emma.
Yeah, so at the moment, the plan is to move the entire BC Archives operations to the new building in Colwood. When there was a previous plan to develop the downtown site, there was planned to be a small reference room space within that new building, but that was the plan that government then kind of like pulled back from. So at the moment, there are no future plans yet kind of nailed down for the downtown site. That's partially what's behind the engagement that we're doing at the moment, is that discussion about the downtown site. And yeah, like Chris, maybe do you want to comment about how that's happening with your dialogues?
I'm sorry, say that again, because I was just reading I was reading the questions. So.
I was just saying that as part of your engagement,
Mhm.
the discussion about what's happening with the downtown site is part of what you're talking about. And it's hoped that then we'll be able to write that up in a report, what people would like to see happen.
For sure. And maybe, Emma, if you wanted to just stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
And then you could always come back to your slide, show if there's referring back to a particular one. So yeah, I could just say very briefly that with our work with the downtown site and different options, one of the options is to revitalize this site. So where often it's thought of as like either everything comes down and a new building comes up, or it stays the same. We're really looking at the whole range of different options with this downtown site. So with a revitalizing the site option, it might mean new buildings come up around the existing site, and then that allows the opportunity to rethink and reimagine what's possible on this downtown precinct site. So that is absolutely under consideration as part of those discussions. And removing my spotlight and putting the spotlight back onto you,
Okay.
Emma. Okay. So the next question is, well, Jennifer makes a comment, would it be possible, or question, would it be possible to give more notice of upcoming consultations? Will these be communicated to targeted groups? And if so, to which groups? I think you spoke to that, Emma, with one of your slides.
Yeah.
So I think that's a comment, but it's but I think you spoke to that, and this is also in the beginning of a much longer engagement process. So
Exactly.
it's
And I think we're very open. We realized that, we weren't able to give too much advance notice of this information session. We're very open to doing some more, and especially with targeted groups, and that's why we're having conversations with different groups too. So if there's a certain, some others that we're reaching out to as well will be the genealogical societies across the province as well. So, if we hear from people that they'd like to have a session specifically, either an information session or a dialogue, we're 100% open to working with them to develop that.
and that's paralleling a little the work that we're doing in the broader community engagement, where if we're being proactive but also responsive to requests of particular organizations that want to deepen into some of these questions. The majority of researchers are not so this is Donna who asks, the majority of researchers are not able to physically visit the archives. What efforts are being made to improve access to the collection to people around the province and provide timely digitization and copying remotely? Will you be sufficiently funded to staff the facility? I guess that's two questions in one.
Okay, so in terms of remotely, I mean, this is partially where, like, we'd love to hear what your opinion is on this, because with remote access, my understanding is that, people will probably therefore want to see more records digitized and online. So that's why this new building has both 3 new digitization labs so that we can really increase our capacity, because with the current site, we just don't have the space or the facilities for it, is one of the issues. And then we'll also be having this community digitization lab, which offers that opportunity in a way to crowdsource digitization, where I say we could work. Yeah, maybe I should expand a bit more about how that is planned to work. So if you look at the model that Library and Archives Canada developed, they offered people or community groups could contact them if they had an interest in specific records within their collection. So I'm just going to use as an example. Say we have for example, Musqueam Nation have been very much sort of reaching out to different archives and asking for copies of records that relate to their peoples and their territories, and bringing them all together in their community archive. If we have this community digitization space, it offers the opportunity where we're providing the actual digitization technology, the scanners. We'll provide some care and handling training to people, and training on how to use the technology, but essentially it offers, if there's a certain community group that wants to come to the archives and do the digitization themselves, they end up with copies of the materials that they were hoping for, and we end up with a copy that we can therefore then keep and either put up online if it's free of restrictions, or make sure it's available for then someone asking in the future. So that's sort of the general idea of how that would work. And then in addition to that, we've got other internal labs where we've increased our capacity to be running digitization projects. So that's kind of, I would say, how the new building is future thinking, increasing remote access to the collection. But if you have other thoughts on that in terms of either opening umbrella sites or working closer with other partners across the province, very, very interested in hearing what you think would be of benefit to you where you are.
So Emma, we have a follow-up from Lisa from before when we were talking about what's going to be stored on site and off site. And Lisa asks, will it be changed what's stored on site versus off site?
That will be one of the things that we look at once we're in the new building. So the way that we've been talking about it as a team is, yeah, we want to evaluate, and it means doing a bit of an analysis, which is why I can't tell you the answer right now. But we want to evaluate to make sure that if we have records where they're the most frequently requested records from visitors, then we want to make sure those are on site, so that it's not going to impact retrieval times. As the retrieval times as little as possible. Similarly, ensuring that any records that are fragile for conservation preservation reasons, that we're making sure that those have the best storage, and that would be on site. So we'll be looking at that once we move into the new space, or as we move the collection in. Yeah.
And that echoes, Lisa had a follow-up comment, but that echoes what that's sort of the context of what that question was about. So I think you answered that well. Michael follows up saying, will the archives library be available on site and indexed?
Yes, we'll be on site. It's all on our collections database for the library. And right now, actually, so one of the other big things that we're doing through this move is, some of you may or may not be aware, but right now, none of the BC archives is barcoded. So what we'll be doing through the move, we've already barcoded the archives library, and then we'll also be barcoding the archives. And once it gets to its new location in the new building, we'll be adding locations management with a barcode, which I can only imagine. I dream of a world where instead of having to put in a paper call slip, it's all done digitally and electronically. But that's a huge step forward in terms of getting there. That won't happen immediately as we move into the building, but we're making steps to get there and to improve our location management of the collection as we move to this new site.
Right. And Michael also asked, will there be the upcoming sessions? You mentioned the 4 themes. Do you envision that each of those conversations will envelop all 4 of those themes, or will they be listed as to which topics will be focused on?
No, so at each session we're planning to go through all 4 questions, is how we're planning on running those.
Great. So Jan asks, can the public ask for items, for example, photograph albums to be digitized, and how much would that cost per photograph?
Well, we can send out information again about the costs for requesting digitization and reproduction of materials remotely. That's all on our website. But how about we can take down your information, Jen, and my team can get back to you with more information on that process. There is information on our website that we're currently reviewing, because we do think that we acknowledge it's a bit confusing potentially right now how the web pages are structured. So we're trying to improve and make that clearer for people.
Rosanna asks, will you be reaching out to the BC Métis Federation as well?
Yeah, the Royal BC Museum already has an ongoing relationship with the BC Métis Federation and Métis Nation BC. So, and I think, Chris, you probably already had some conversations with them, if that's right.
Yeah, particularly in Métis Nation BC, we've had a fair amount of engagement sessions with.
Yeah.
With
Yeah, so 100%. They're very much, both of them are included in our communications around this engagement.
Do we have so Melissa asked, do we have an update on how many parking spots will be available at the new site?
That's a good question that I don't have on my fingertips right now. It's significant. Take that away.
It's significant. Right? There's a lot of parking available at the site. So I think it's close to I don't want to say numbers, but
no, I have one on the tip of my tongue, but I also am like, well, what I'm vaguely remembering. I don't want to say it unless it's incorrect.
And charging stations for electric cars as well. So, but there is, I was just talking recently with some transportation folks, and there are some really great ideas that can't share out yet, but there's some really great ideas on how to have that integrated transportation plan for that site. So, and Melissa also asks, or another Melissa actually asks, but connected to the first Melissa, what kind of parking fees will be imposed? And I have not heard that there would be any parking fees.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think that the organization has yet made a decision on that. So yeah, again, we could find out more about if there has been. I've certainly not heard anything on that.
The next comment is from Laura, just saying, I see that the museum survey presents different futures for downtown precinct. And yes, that is something that my team has worked with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture, and Sport to put out the full range of opportunities with this downtown site. One being not to do anything, but that doesn't mean that here, I'm just going to put my camera on. Just that doesn't mean that it's that it's not doing anything, because there's constant upkeep and of this aging facility. So, and it keeps all of the seismic risks and concerns and environmental concerns on the site, but that's an option on the table. Another option is just to renovate just in terms of addressing the seismic concerns and the environmental concerns. Another is that revitalize the site, which I had mentioned before. Another is what was the case 2 years ago, that the plan put forward is everything comes down and a new building comes up on this site. Another option is that we rebuild the museum site, but on a different site in Greater Victoria. And then there's also a section around recognizing that we're a provincial museum, and maybe there's less of a focus on this downtown site and more of a focus on satellites or hubs around the province, in addition to this downtown site. So that's just gives a little bit of those 6 options, and that's a really important part of our community engagement work, is to really hear where people are, where people land on those different options. And we've had incredible conversations so far with community groups around that. I'm going to spotlight you again, Emma. So Jennifer asks, is there a timeline for the completion of consultation, i.e. end of fiscal?
There was,
Yeah.
and it's been extended. So the timeline right now is 2024. Originally, we thought we were potentially going to be limited by the end of fiscal this year, but we aren't anymore. Hooray! So we can keep talking about this for us, certainly I would anticipate we'd want to, it offers the opportunity to expand the number of sessions that we currently have planned to continue on into the summer.
And Laura asks, this may be a question for an upcoming session, but what trends do you see in public services at other provincial and territorial archives in Canada?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think, like, for example, the development of the DigiLab and looking to Library and Archives Canada, they're currently building a new downtown public access facility with Ottawa Public Library. So I went and visited Ottawa and that site and spoke to their team there. So we've been working sort of very much in tandem with them and hearing about how they've been approaching things. In fact, we currently have a plan to present myself and some archivists from Library and Archives Canada about designing buildings for our users and services for our users, based on hearing what people would like to see. That's planned for the Association of Canadian Archivists conference this summer, potentially, if we get it accepted. But we're very closely connected with the Council of Provincial and Territorial Archivists as well, and we have biannual meetings. So it's always interesting to see what our peer jurisdictions are doing. Certainly something, and this again is one of the reasons why this organization, YBC, is looking to increase its digitization capacity, because if you look at that across Canada, there's certain provinces or territories that have been a bit more successful in basically increasing the number of staff and the resources they have dedicated to digitization to increase remote access by putting more things online. So that's certainly something that you see if you look at the other archives across Canada. But yeah, I would say that, I think that we have a good relationship with our peers, and I certainly rely on them sometimes to sort of ask questions and see where people are at. But again, I think that it's very different. The people on this call are potentially the users of those archives, and it's a very different experience using an archive than it is kind of working in one. So we're very interested in what your perspectives would be on that. If you've been to another archive and you've seen this, you think they're delivering things in a certain way that was super successful or you really appreciated, please, we'd love to hear from you.
And on the theme of digitization, Bonnie asks, is there any digitization of audio video being done now, or is it on hold until 2026? My concern is the condition and continued deterioration of the recordings.
Yeah, no, very, very fair question. We had the person who was in our kind of collections manager position for audiovisual retire, and so the position has been vacant. We're currently working to fill that one right now, to post that position as quickly as we can. So I'm hopeful that that position will be filled this year, and then that can continue again and we can catch up. And I can only apologize for the fact that it has been vacant for this last little while.
And it makes me think of the other collections that are coming over, the natural history collections, human history, non-Indigenous human history collections, that they are being packed up right now. And so it will make for, I'm not speaking to the archives, just only speaking to the other collections, but there is some disruption in terms of access to collections, just because of the nature of the pack and move process. So, Angie asks, how big will the microfilm reader space be? Comparable to what is available now, other than the reduction in storage space with improved efficiencies?
It's a bit, no, I would say it's smaller because our footprint is smaller, but it's kind of more condensed. It's the same number, so I did count the other day. So I think it's there's only a reduction. I want to say that right now I think we have approximately 15 either microfilm, fiche, audio or visual kind of stations, including we have a number of computers in the reference room right now. I think it's 3 that are just computers. They're there for people who maybe don't have their access to a computer or a laptop or internet, and so that they would want to use those in the room. So as I said, I think it's 15 currently in total, and it will be 12 in the new space. And we got rid of a couple of the just workstations, the computer stations, and cut that down to 1, because what we're doing right now is procuring some more tablets, because we experimented for a while about using tablets as a way instead of actually having like standalone workstations. So there'll still be one there for anyone that wants to access that if they don't have their own laptop. But because there'll be better Wi-Fi connectivity in our new space, we're anticipating that people will be able to use their own laptops much more in the room. So yeah, but in terms of, so that's kind of its comparable number of workstations as we have currently. I just think they're like slightly closer together is how the layout is. Yeah. I did ask, I have to say, I asked for permission to share floor plans with you so you could see the plan, but unfortunately we weren't approved to share those for this presentation because of potential security risks in sharing floor plans. So sorry about that.
At this time, but we will. And there's a nice exchange with Jan and Angie. Jan was just asking about the licensing fee for photographs, and Angie had the link to the change in that.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, we eliminated licensing fees last year, or was it? Yeah, where are we now? 2024. We eliminated them last April 23.
Great. I know as I'm going around the province and sitting in on different conversations, I've heard time and time again how grateful people are of that. So Heather asks, can archival institutions continue to send potential donors of private sector records your way through the next year or 2, or are you hoping to constrain what comes in a bit so that it doesn't have to be moved?
Yeah, it's a good question. As of this year, yes, we are going to constrain a bit because, as we've just said, we're packing everything up. So it's not really the right time to be potentially, we have to at some point kind of stop the flow of incoming new materials. And so as of this year, we should be, if it isn't already updated, it should be updated very soon, but updating the text on the website and also on the email address that we have for donations to just say that we're limiting we're not saying no to everything, but it really would have to be something that was quite a significant donation. And that's significant in terms of we acquire private records based on the Royal BC Museum's collections policy. So if it was something that we felt that was very much of such importance to the province that that we should definitely move forward with the donation, we would continue to do that now. But we're certainly limiting our operations in terms of acquiring new materials. And the plan is that, you know, we have to, in order to pack everything up and then move it. But then once we get in 2026, we'll be back to normal operations. So yes, it's at the moment for the next couple of years, we'll be kind of limiting how much we take in from in terms of private donations, but not saying no to everything.
And that's the last of the questions that I see. If I'm missing any, or if anyone wants to ask a question live and want to speak in a question or a thought or idea, feel free to just raise your hand. And if not, maybe just I'll give a few more minutes just for see if there are any other questions coming in. And just to say also that, sorry, I'm just going to remove this spotlight. Just Emma, you envision the next sessions more of a dialogue, and this was really an opportunity to set the stage in terms of what these sessions will be about, but then also to have it be about information sharing and because it is a big transition from here out to the collections and research building, and so wanted to make sure that yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so yeah, today was very much meant to be sharing some information about what our future looks like, because we anticipate that there's no way we can have a kind of a dialogue about that without everyone understanding what the move to the CRB looks like. And so we've been working with our communications team at the moment to make sure there's a bit more information on the Royal BC Museum website about that. So I would hope and anticipate within the next few weeks, there'll actually be more information on our site about what we're talking about today, that we'll be able to point to and people can look at in advance of some of those dialogue sessions if they weren't able to attend today. Also, as we said, we are recording this session, so we hope to be able to make that recording available for people, that they might be able to review this if they're interested in advance of some of those future conversation sessions. But yeah, that's where in these sessions, with that knowledge, armed with that knowledge and information about now what you know the future of the archives looks like, we can have some really interesting conversations about what your thoughts on that are and what you'd like to see based on those 4 themes.
Okay. And we had 2 new questions that have come in. Good questions. So Melissa, these all have been good questions. So, but with the move, will you be deaccessioning any material? Melissa asks.
We have been deaccessioning some material, and but not vast quantities. So just let me kind of explain that further. As you can imagine, going through and packing up an archive, you go through the shelves and you're going through and making sure we're aware of what we have and what it is. But inevitably, or certainly in this place, it seems that you might find something on a shelf where nobody knows what this is. Has it been catalogued? Why isn't it in a box? What is this? What does it relate to? So we, at the moment, the archivists are kind of going through, we're trying to pack everything up, ensure that if it isn't described, that we know what it is. Do we want to keep it, or maybe we don't want to keep it? Maybe this, and some of the things that we have, for example, deaccessioned, have been where we've identified, say, trying to think of some audiovisual materials that maybe have copies of something that have deteriorated and that no one can access anyway now. That's an example that comes to mind. What we're also doing is working very closely with other archives across the province. So if there's something that we identify that was maybe a loose document on a shelf that was undescribed, and we don't think it's maybe of something that we want to add to the BC Archives collection, but maybe City of Victoria archives are interested in it, or whoever might be the relevant archives in that instance, we've been working on transferring materials to other institutions too. So yeah, and we have the collections policy, the Royal BC Museum collections policy, which is available online, and you can read it if you like. It means if we're deaccessioning things, there's a whole kind of list of steps that we have to go through. So the kind of physical destruction of materials is like right at the bottom. And I would say that it's very rare, unless in that instance where things are completely unreadable, that that would be what we'd do with anything that was deaccession, just to kind of temper everyone's, maybe concerns around that. But yeah, so there has been some deaccessions and divestments, but it's mostly when we're sorting through materials that haven't been described at all up to this point, and we're just finding things on shelves that, just kind of loose odds and ends, as it were.
Great. And I think the final question, which is a really good question, and it got a thumbs up and a +1 from Laura, but it's really important. Question is from Angie. Is the BC Archives or RBCM monitoring the tribal consent laws and approach in the US at the American Museum of Natural History, where they are closing exhibits as they get tribal consents? Any thoughts on that?
I think that was probably something that might be better directed to our ICAR team, Indigenous Collections and Repatriation. Angie, I think that certainly that's, part of why we're sort of asking these questions around reconciliation. I think from our side, we've begun this year to form a working group looking very much at the Steering Committee on Canadian Archives reconciliation framework that was published in 2022, and start using that document as a team to work through how we will use those principles and everything that's outlined there in terms of changing our current practices and procedures and implementing them here at the BC Archives. I think more broadly, as relates to the collections and exhibits, that does sit a bit more with our ICAR team. But I would say that they very much also are completely rethinking, reworking where they're at and how the Royal BC Museum plans its exhibits. For example, and Chris, I don't know if you were present at this. Were you present at the committee meeting that happened recently?
Yeah, I was gonna speak to that, but you.
Yeah, maybe do you want to talk about that, because I think that's really relevant in this context.
Yeah, so within the larger, so again, this larger community engagement umbrella work, there is, well, actually just to say off the bat, is that 2.5 years ago, there was the decision to close the galleries on the 3rd floor. And part of that was around the potential rebuild of the whole museum, but also a recognition that those galleries needed some real care and consideration and rethink. And so the First Peoples Gallery has stayed closed until recently. There was a committee that was brought together. There's led by, like Emma said, the Indigenous Collections and Repatriation team. There's 18 Indigenous leaders from around the province that are leading on that committee to rethink that gallery space from the ground up. So it's a process that's in place. And I will say that we also in April had a provincial gathering through our community engagement work. We had 29 folks from around the province representing 21 nations. And the main theme that came out of that was around consent. And it's really like what was advocated and shared within the room, both the invited guests and staff here at the museum. So it's a really good question, and it's core to the work here. Emma, do you have any final thoughts? Or
Well, only to
I
say
sort of feel
thank
like
you.
Trevor should also say hello
Trevor,
too.
would you like to say hello?
Because especially because Trevor is relatively new, it might be good for people. Trevor, sorry to put you on the spot if you are open to putting your camera on.
Oh, no worries. Sorry. I just if anyone noticed, I was in the chat sending all the links to the various emails and pages. But hi, I'm Trevor. If any of you have never been in the reference room when I've been in there, I am the Community Engagement and Outreach Archivist at the BC Archives. So Emma and I work hand in hand to actually do this work. So you might receive emails from me with with the upcoming things like our survey, but I'll also be attending all of these sessions. So if you see me and you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask or approach me. We're really looking to just any feedback you have about the upcoming process. We're more than happy to have it, but just wanted to say hi.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Trevor.
Trevor. Yeah, maybe I'll just quickly see if I can figure out how to share my screen again. I'll just put up the dates again, if you can see those. So yeah, just to say, like, thank you so much for all the questions that have come up today. I really look forward to talking with you more on all of this. If you are in Victoria and you'd like to join us on February 25th, it will, as we said, it will have more information will be upcoming and on the website about how to sign up about this shortly. The session will be in our conference hall here at the Royal BC Museum in the afternoon, same time as this session. And if you aren't in Victoria and you really want to have a conversation about this also, you have two options right now in March, March 10th and March 24th, where we'll be going through those questions that I ran through earlier. And yeah, I'm just talking about this more. We should mention actually that I would like to say a big thank you to Kyle, who's also on this call, who's taking notes for us throughout this session. So he's taking notes, he'll be taking notes in the future sessions too, so that everything that you have to say, you know, we're able to write up and look at and digest everything that we hear and all your great thoughts on what our future should look like. So we really appreciate hearing from you, especially, you know, I know that in a session like today, we can't delve right into the details with things, but potentially in those dialogue sessions, we might have more time for that. But yeah, if there's strong feelings that you have around, I don't know, our opening hours or microfilm readers, all those things, we'd really love to hear from that, about that. And yeah, just look forward to having more conversations with you all. Thank you. Thank you for taking some time out on a Sunday to talk about the BC Archives.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye.